Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of What to Stream, and we're here with Morgan. Welcome back.
Thank you. Great
You had
to
a
be
little
back.
sabbatical the last 2 weeks.
I did. Work just piles up, and I was missing out on a lot of movies, and so I caught up on some. So I have some new movies to talk about this week that I'm very excited about.
All right, well then let's get started. What is your first pick?
Cool. So the first is actually a series that is going to be streaming on Apple TV Plus starting on Friday, and this is called The Me You Cant See. This is a series that is co-created by Oprah Winfrey and Prince Harry. You may have seen their sit-down, tell-all talk interview back in March where Prince Harry was joined by his wife, Meghan Markle, and they talked to Oprah very candidly about growing up, for Harry, growing up in the royal family, and Meghan, how she integrated into this family and just the drama that kind of went along with that. This docuseries kind of is in a similar vein. Oprah and Prince Harry talk about their personal struggles with mental health. That's what this entire series is based on. It's to shine a light on what they're calling the invisible illness that is mental health. And the HCA, we were lucky to get advanced screeners of this for the first couple episodes. And so I saw the first one. And it runs about an hour long, and there's 3 available now, but I think they're going to be probably a couple more than that as they start to come out on Apple TV Plus. But it's really fascinating just hearing these really vulnerable and intimate details of someone who you think you know, because these people are celebrities. We feel like we know them, when in actuality, we really don't know much about them at all, only what they tell us. And what we find out from just the first episode alone is that what they tell us, they've been putting on an act. They've been acting brave. They've been, sucking it up for so long, and finally are sharing some really uncomfortable stories about their past. Oprah, she was sexually assaulted when she was a young girl. Prince Harry, of course, we all know he was traumatized by the death of his mother, and just constant attention and paparazzi, and growing up under scrutiny and just this eye. And then we have some people that we haven't necessarily, that aren't maybe the most well-known household figures. There's a chef who struggles with depression, and a boxer who struggles with OCD. And then we have Lady Gaga who shares her story of being sexually assaulted and her psychotic break that she suffered not too long ago, actually. Wow. And yeah, it's really fascinating. This entire documentary series is something that I'm so happy is being made and put out now, especially kind of after all surviving 2020, when isolation and depression was kind of at an all-time high, I think, universally. This series aims to show that everyone struggles with something, even if we don't say it out loud, and just to be kind to people and to just, help one another, and that we can all kind of get through this with just compassion and love. And it's a really uplifting series. And I think it's great. It comes out on Friday. The first episode, at least, comes out Friday on Apple TV Plus.
Who's the first episode? Who's the subject?
There's a few. So they profile 5 different people.
Oh, in one show?
Yeah. So they're small little vignettes. And I have a feeling they're going to incorporate more people as we go along. Like I saw Glenn Close was in the poster, and she wasn't talked about in the first episode. So I know she'll be coming in. I'd imagine they'd, keep Oprah and Prince Harry kind of throughout.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're going to be, I think, circulating people and just casting a really wide net with that.
Yeah, Prince Harry, I mean, the tragedy he went through. I still remember seeing him in the funeral when they did the parade, and him walking with his head down. I was like, oh, that boy's going to be traumatized forever now. I mean, to think that, all of us were angry that this happened, that the paparazzi were at fault. So you can imagine the child of the victim.
Right. And that's what he kind of was saying too. He was upset, oddly, that the public was grieving openly for Princess Diana. And he was like, why are you so upset? Like, she was my mom. You didn't even know her. But he couldn't grieve publicly. He just wouldn't allow himself to do it. So every time he saw people crying, he would be more frustrated and more angry. So it's really, it's very psychologically interesting too, just kind of hearing his story and him talking about, that whole experience.
Well, especially, you're dealing with the crown and, it's all stuff upper stiff lip and you can't show emotion. I mean, I think that's why sometimes you don't connect. That's why Princess Diana, connected, because she wasn't this stoic, no emotion,
Yeah.
Try to read my face, poker face kind of deal.
Right. Exactly. 100%. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll definitely look at, especially coupled with Meghan. Do they touch upon Meghan Markle or is that a different episode?
They don't. And I think that was intentional because she is a bit divisive, I guess, depending on who you ask. People like love her or hate her, and there's kind of no in between. So I think they didn't want the narrative to kind of go towards Meghan. So she's in it, like she's kind of sprinkled in B-roll and stuff. But yeah, they don't talk about her in it.
Well, hopefully once people see Prince Harry and what he talks about, maybe they'll understand why he made the decision he made to move away, because, it's traumatic, and thinking that that's going to happen to your wife as well and your child.
Yeah.
I think people don't understand that, those who are against the move, but I can totally understand it.
Yeah. Oh, it makes so much more sense after watching even just the first episode. Yeah.
Okay.
It really does.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about something a little frivolous. And I'm talking about the new Marvel show on Hulu, Modok. It's a Marvel comic that's been adapted by Patton Oswalt. He's a big fan, obviously, of comic books. And so he created this for TV for Hulu. It's going to be on Hulu, not Disney Plus. And it centers on this guy with a big head. It's a stop motion animated show, which I was surprised to learn. It's 10 episodes. The character was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It's adapted for TV, as I mentioned. So basically, he is a petulant supervillain failing to conquer the world. But most importantly, he's not able to conquer his own family. So he was born a mere mortal with a huge head. And because he was teased, he decided he was going to run the world. So he did some experimentation on himself as a scientist, and to gain superior intellect and to take over the world. So hence, you get this chair, which magnifies his abilities. So when we meet him, he's running his company, financially going under. The company's name is Advanced Idea Mechanics, AIM for short. And he's running it into the ground. So a conglomerate offers to come in and help, but you know how that goes in general. In reality, they take over. He doesn't like it, and on top of that, his wife announces she wants a divorce because he is so. He doesn't bother with his wife. He doesn't bother with her interest. All he thinks about is himself. He's narcissistic, so she gets tired of it. She's got her own dreams. She wants to advance. She wants to do her own thing, and he's just not very understanding. But what do you expect when you're talking to a petulant supervillain? You have no choice. And he's got 2 kids who are running around out of control. They are hilarious. They are voiced by, I forgot to mention, Modok is voiced by Patton Oswalt himself. He also executive produces, as I mentioned, and does some of the writing. Amy Garcia from Lucifer is the voice of Jodie, his wife. Ben Schwartz plays the son, Lou, and he is hilarious. If you're a fan of Ben Schwartz, you'll hear a little bit of Sonic in there. He's just hilarious. And Melissa Fumero from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, she plays the daughter, and she takes after her old man. And sometimes she's a little more vicious than Dad. I think she's got a little more control of the villainy in her. And Wendy McClendon Covey is also a voice in it. Whoopi Goldberg, Nathan Fillion. Who am I missing here? Oh, and his Modok's arch enemy is Iron Man. So we do have some Marvel characters coming in and causing havoc with him. And that's voiced by John Hamm. So he just comes in here and there, and it's just funny because it just irks him so much that he gets really, really, really irritated. And it's funny. It's a stop motion animation, as I mentioned. That's basically what's a standout of the show, is that it just looks really cute, cool, and the puppetry. I really like it. Just the look of it. Patton Oswalt's voice, it gets on my nerves. He's got that high pitched, and this character is whiny, so it gets on my nerves a little bit. So I have to get past it. It's not really my cup of tea for the show because it plays more like a family sitcom because he's going through a divorce. So he's trying to save his marriage, and he's also trying to save his company from this conglomerate company. So it's a different type of Marvel property. So I can see why it's on Hulu, or maybe they're still working out that deal. They still have some properties left with Hulu. But I think it's a standout because of the stop motion animation. So I would just check it out because of that. Because it reminds you of the old school stop motion animation. So I really dig it. I really dig the looks, the kind of the puppetry.
Oh yeah, I was laughing the entire time you were talking. I was just like laughing off camera because like just that face. Yeah. And I mean, the people, John Hamm, he can play straight, but he's also really funny. And I want, like, is he funny in this role as the villain?
Yeah, because he plays like a narcissist as well as we know Tony Stark is. So for him, it's like, damn, because he's also a scientist. And Tony Stark is kind of a scientist, and he invents his own thing. So that's his aspiration. So in the first episode, he's fighting him, and Iron Man's boot gets stuck in his chair. So he takes it back to the company. He's like, look, I got his boot. You want to touch me? You want to touch me while I'm holding the... So funny. It's like he hates somebody, reveres him at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and there's mention of S.H.I.E.L.D. So there's, it's funny. But like I said, I have to get past the Patton Oswalt's voice. It's just like nails on chalkboard for me sometimes. And when you have him as a whiny character, you're like, oh man.
Yeah, especially as the lead too, I bet. Yeah, it's probably some people's cup of tea. Others is kind of like...
Yeah, I mean, you really have to be into it. But I mean, I thought it's cute. It's cute. And I like the fact that it's the first, I read somewhere that it's the first biracial couple because his wife, Jodie, is Latina. So they throw in a couple of Spanish words here and there. And the kids are like on the brown skin side. And so I like that aspect of it. But also she plays the wife, and she's going to become a supervillain in her own right.
Nice.
And you can see the little remnants of that building up. So I really like that they're creating an arc for her, and she's just not the wife, on the side. Yeah. So she's got her own, whole little character arc. And I think some people will want to see like where she goes. That's actually why I would want to continue watching it. I got up to episode 4, but I want to see where that's going to progress.
Nice.
So
cool. Well, that looks funny. I'm interested in that.
Yeah. So it's on Hulu this Friday. So check it out if that's sounds like something you want to have fun with.
Sweet. Yep. Well, I have another film to talk about. That's one that you may have missed. This is a movie that came out last Friday, the 14th, and that's called The Killing of Two Lovers. And this is released by Neon. It's now available to stream on VOD and I guess in select Laemmle theaters. Theaters are opening. I think it might be Laemmle Virtual Online, so I would look into that if you're interested in supporting Laemmle theaters and watching it there. But anyway, the film tells the story of a husband and wife who agree to amicably separate, staying married, but allowing each other to see other people while they figure out where their relationship is going. So the film is from the point of view of the man, who is played by Clayne Crawford. He is a very distraught father. His wife has the house. His wife has more time with the kids during their kind of custody agreement. And his wife is already moved on and dating someone else. And he doesn't take that well. He's living with his father in his father's house, which is just a block away from his old familial home that he shared with his wife and his kids. And he is really struggling to make sense of his new reality and this relationship dynamic. And he's not happy about that. The film is kind of depressing in a way. It's definitely a really heavy relationship drama. It kind of reminded me actually of Marriage Story and how it felt kind of catharsis for the director Noah Baumbach to relive some of this just traumatic relationship turmoil. It kind of feels the same way for the director of this movie, Robert Maconian, I believe his name is. It's full of heartache. It's full of angst. It's really well done, though, in the acting department. The performances are phenomenal. Most of the film relies, like I said, on Clayne Crawford, who just carries this movie. He is really, all of his emotions are just so tightly wound, and he only explodes towards the very end. And that's when things kind of get really heavy and intense. This also premiered at Sundance earlier this year. So it's a Sundance supported film. I will say, though, the one thing that kind of felt a little bit disappointing was the ending. Like, I think this film has a really big buildup. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of one takes that are incorporated in the film, which I also kind of think in my review that I posted last week, that it just felt a little maybe heavy on the one takes. The gimmick of it sort of lost the anticipation of like what's going to come. It just kind of felt like, okay, we get it. We know this is happening. But for all of that, the ending was just a bit, oh, okay, that's it. But I kind of was interpreting that like, okay, well, that's life. I mean, sometimes life has uninteresting endings, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just is. So if you're expecting this really powerful Marriage Story-esque type of relationship drama movie, I don't think you'll necessarily find it in The Killing of Two Lovers. I think you might be even slightly disappointed. But if you're just looking for something that's really strong, artistically and emotionally, and has great acting, then I'd recommend it. I mean, I wouldn't maybe rush out to see it, but if you're wanting to get a little heartbroken on a weekday night, this is a good option.
Well, I'm curious. I think they had sent me a request if I wanted to see it, but I didn't get around to it. The title, what is the title? Is it a metaphor for something?
So what's really interesting is the picture that I included in this little slideshow and the title itself, like that looks like an old-timey Western-y mugshot.
Yeah.
It kind of doesn't relate at all. The title, sort of, you can kind of connect the dots. It's not literal. So I don't know, spoiler alert. It's not like a literal title. Maybe you can interpret it as being like an emotional death with this relationship, how they've now separated and they're both dying for love. I don't know. The poster, though, kind of throws me because it's not, I don't know. I don't know where that came from. Maybe they just thought it looks cool.
Different vibe. The marketing team was like, I know.
Yeah. That's exactly it. It kind of looks like a Westworld sort of poster, but it has nothing to do with the movie. But that's life.
It's just drama.
It's just a drama. Yeah.
It's just a drama.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, you answered my, I was curious because like the title is what got my attention. I was like, oh, what is this about? So,
yeah, you didn't miss too much.
I didn't miss too much. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, speaking of dramas, I have a drama called The Dry. It's set in Australia. It's an Australian film starring Eric Bana. I love that man. So it's a really good movie. It opened in Australia earlier this year in January, and it became the 14th highest grossing film in that country. He's also a producer on the film. It's based on a 2016 novel by British-born author Jane Harper. Bana plays a federal police agent named Aaron Falk. He returns to his farming community for the funeral of his childhood best friend, who sadly apparently murdered his wife and child and left an infant alive. And so he's not too crazy about going back to this community, and we can see why he's not welcomed back with open arms. Apparently there was something that happened when he was a teen. He was a local girl was found dead in the river, and he was one of the suspects, but nothing ever came of it. So there's a lot of anger towards him because he left town with his dad. And so he's having a hard time being there. And on top of that, his friend's parents have asked him to investigate because they know their son, the usual story. Their son would never do this. Everyone's calling him a murderer, but the parents cannot fathom the idea. So they ask him to stay, which he reluctantly does. and you can see her with another local sheriff to figure out like what exactly happened. And all of this takes place with the background of arid, dry land. It's basically a tinderbox. If you remember last year, they had these really bad fires in this kind of area, farming area. And so everything's really, really dry. And that's just a great backdrop for this movie because like this land can go up in any minute, and it kind of mirrors what the characters are going through because it's everyone's on edge because their farming community is they're experiencing a big drought, so nobody is able to do their work, and so they're experiencing a lot of stress. And on top of that, you have this man who's back in town. He's bringing back a lot of these memories about a death that went unanswered, and at the same time, he's trying to almost solve it. It becomes his murder thriller. And he's trying to find out like what exactly happened. But there's also hints that maybe it was true. So there's two different kind of storylines. There's the present, and then he goes back in time through flashbacks when he was friends with the man who murdered his family and two other girls. And so you see, these two stories kind of fleshed out. And it's really interesting. It's a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, Eric Bana, he's really good in it. He plays the brooding guy really well. And Hugh Jackman was a big fan. I just watched when I watched the film, they had a Q&A afterwards, and he just was hoping that to get it out to more people. So they did this Q&A for the U.S. audience. So it's out this Friday, and it's a really good murder mystery. At first, it's confusing because I thought, well, he killed his family, so how is it a murder mystery? Because it starts to play out that way. But then when you start seeing the flashbacks, you're like, oh, maybe he did it. The girl that they found in the river, they kind of tied the two stories together. So that's when it starts to get interesting. Like, oh, maybe it wasn't a murder suicide, so then you're more intrigued. But yeah, so like the backdrop, I'm not, I'm used to seeing Australia, Melbourne, like the big cities. I've never really seen like the farming community, modern community. We've seen like the historical pics set like in the remote areas. So it's a really eye-opening to see how in another country, how they're suffering with drought and those kind of things. And the way they set it as a backdrop with what the characters going through, the characters are ready to blow up as well. So I like that about the film, just like the contrast of it. Because and the contrast and the cinematography is just very, like, it mimics the dry land, which I like. It's like, that must be a really depressing place to live because there's just no greenery.
Right.
Everything's just burnt. It was just dried out.
Wow. It's amazing that that's one of the highest grossing films in Australia.
Well, I looked up the number. I think it's at 20 million. So I don't think they're on the level that the US, obviously. I don't know if their population, movie-going population, but I think I read it was like 20 million. So it's not a high bar.
Yeah. It's an impressive stat though.
But it is for a crime thriller. It's not an action movie. It's not a high profile pick. So it's amazing that this kind of a movie even topped the top 15.
Right. Yeah.
So
impressive.
Check it out. And if you're a fan of Eric Bana, not a bad sight.
Yes.
And he's pretty much the only known actor. Everybody else I don't recognize. I mean, I'm sure they're known actors there in Australia. And the director is Robert Connolly. Apparently, from what I gather from Hugh Jackman, he's a really influential filmmaker there. So I have not heard of him, but I think most of his work has been in Australia, and I think he's partners with Eric Bana. And this was Eric Bana's like first film, like in 14 years in Australia.
Wow. Maybe that's why it was so highly grossing. People just missed him on the big screen or something.
Exactly, probably.
Cool.
So, to watch a homegrown film with their Eric Bana.
Yeah.
Was a draw, I'm sure.
Nice.
Yeah. So what's up next for you?
Cool. So the last film that I'm going to talk about is a movie from 2017. And this is one I think that is timeless. If you are on Instagram, if you have a smartphone, you might be able to relate. This is a movie called Ingrid Goes West. And this stars Aubrey Plaza. It is now playing everywhere, and it is especially playing on Hulu. That is where this movie is streaming for free if you are interested in watching and you haven't seen it yet. So this is a Black comedy / dark drama film directed by Matt Spicer and written by David Branson Smith. They actually won the Waldo Salt Screenwriting Award at the Sundance Film Festival when this movie premiered there. And rightly so. I mean, the writing and the script, this whole movie is just so smart. Basically, it tells the story of a girl named Ingrid, who's played by Aubrey Plaza. And she is a mentally unstable 20-something-year-old who is looking for a connection. Her mom recently passes away. She goes to social media to connect with people. She posts pictures hoping to get likes. And she, over time, believes that the likes are authentic relationships and gets really excited when an influencer that she knows about likes or comments on one of her pictures. And she immediately thinks, oh my God, I'm going to be best friends with this girl. She knows who I am. This is it. We're best friends. So Ingrid picks up and moves to Venice Beach, which she has cyber stalked her influencer friend, who's played by Elizabeth Olsen, and moves in pretty much right next door and weasels her way into Taylor Sloan, played by Elizabeth Olsen, into Taylor's life and infiltrates her bubble and her circle, pretending to be someone she's not. So Ingrid is the typical kind of cyber stalker, Instagram stalker wannabe it girl to appeal to Taylor and get her to be best friends in real life. But then, of course, she can't keep that up because that is impossible to do. And their friendship eventually comes to a head when Taylor realizes that Ingrid is not who she says she is, and things get a little bit rocky. The acting, okay, so Aubrey Plaza is great. If you know her from, Parks and Rec or Little Hours or just kind of anything she's done, she has this typical, very deadpan, very dry humor. And she isn't that way so much in this movie, which is really interesting. She's very bubbly and she's very girly, and it's really funny to see her in that role because it is so different from everything else that she's pretty much done before. She is the perfect person to play Ingrid because she just kind of, encapsulates everything that a cyber stalker would be. It's a really funny movie. It's very timely. Even, 2017, it was timely then. I feel like 2021, it's only getting more timely now with just more apps and more influencers and more people just wanting to be like other people. And the world of social media is just ever evolving. And so this movie is really great. It's really funny. If you're looking for something light, then I highly recommend, Ingrid Goes West.
So this is like a modern day single white female, sort of.
Exactly. Yes. It's a modern day Gen Z single white female.
Oh my God. When you were describing it, I was like, single white female, except not a roommate. It's somebody who's cyber stalking you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's hilarious.
And it probably happens so often. Like this is a comedy, but the reality is this probably happens all the time, just not to this extent. But yeah.
Well, no, especially that you think because you have likes that they're your friends. I can totally see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just people are so reliant on that. It's just kind of sad to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, especially last year with just the internet and apps kind of being our gateway to relationships and communication. It's interesting to see once we kind of come out of this. Mm-hmm. If those friendships we made online are going to stay or if they were even real in the first place. Like it's going to be interesting once we kind of get back out into the real world and have to talk to people in real life.
I didn't make any new friends online. I was too busy binging. I'm a homebody. I don't mind being at home by myself. Well, my husband's here. But, I was like, I don't care if I don't go back. Well, I
know. I do. I kind of was the same.
Yeah, especially the remote work. I would love to keep doing that, especially the interviews. I would.
Yeah. Oh, so much easier.
But All right. Well, I'm going to be talking classic next. Have you watched the Tower Inferno from 1974?
No, not yet.
Well, now you can. It's on Amazon Prime. Now, this movie, everyone, the who's who of 70s Hollywood is in this movie. The Tower Inferno. It's a disaster flick. Everyone was in this movie. Let me read you the list. Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, William Holden, Faye Dunaway, Fred Astaire, Richard Chamberlain, Robert Wagner, Jennifer Jones, Susan Flannery, Robert Vaughn, Gregory Sierra, the only Latino, Dabney Coleman, a young Bobby Brady from the Brady Bunch, actor Mike Lukenland. So it's basically Hollywood's who's who. And here's a list. There's that one person I didn't mention who's a murderer. But yeah, it's all the who's who's of Hollywood. But mainly Steve McQueen and Paul Newman. Those are the icons. And this is a disaster flick. And as you can see from the poster, it's basically just what it sounds like. They're in a skyscraper. It's a party for the rich. And so they get stuck up there. And so a lot of drama unfolds. I believe the fire chief is played by Steve McQueen. So they're trying to figure out how to get the people down. And it's a really good movie. If you've never watched it, I highly suggest it. So I suggest watching this movie. The effects are pretty good for the time. I watched, my husband watched it a few months ago. It was on something. And we're like, oh, it looks pretty good, because they got flames all over the building and flames coming out from the outside view. So it's pretty good. So it's before Die Hard, there was a Tower Inferno because a lot of the action's happening in the skyscraper. So it was I remember when it came out. I don't remember seeing it in the movie. I don't think I saw it in the movie. It was probably on TV because 74, I don't think. Yeah, I was too young. I wouldn't be going to a movie. But I remember watching. I'm like, wow, like this is a cool movie. And it came in an era when there was a bunch of disaster flicks. There was a movie called Earthquake as well. A lot of big names in that one. I don't know if it came before or after Towering Inferno, because once one hit and it was a success, they started to make more. And believe it or not, it was a disaster action flick. This earned 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I don't think I've even heard of it. I'm adding it to my Letterboxd right now.
I didn't even know that until I started researching, and I thought, what? An action film? Because, they said that action films don't rarely get nominated, but I figure with these names in it, who knows? And it went on to win Best Original Song and Best Editing. Not Best Picture. Best Picture went to The Godfather Part 2, which was up that year. Was up in the same category, and Chinatown. What a rough year to pick. Chinatown? I would have gone for Chinatown.
Yeah, I mean, Godfather 2 is great, but that's tough.
Yeah, Chinatown, that's a marvelous movie. So
wow, interesting. Wait, what year was that again? Sorry,
74. 1974.
Okay.
So yeah, the effects I think were pretty good. I mean, I think they stand up in time. Well, Poseidon was another disaster flick. So the 70s were full of disaster action movies. So, but this one I think is memorable because it takes place up in a sky. Well, I mean, obviously it's a set. But the flames and all that stuff, it was pretty groundbreaking then to see those kind of effects. So I think it'll stand the time, the time test.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Cool. Well, that sounds, very interesting. And that cast is stacked.
I mean, Fred is there.
Yeah. I love him.
He was alive in the 70s.
Yeah. Good point.
Well, because we think of him in the old school,
right? It's like dancing his way through everything.
Exactly. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's right. And Richard Chamberlain, which later in the 70s, The Birds. Remember that? I don't know if you know.
That I've seen.
Yeah, he became a household name with that movie, with that TV series.
Right.
So
wow.
Yeah, good film. Check it out. I'm going to actually watch it with my parents again now that I know it's on. Because I watched it on TV, so you always have the constant interruptions with commercials.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But now that you can watch it without interruption on a streaming platform, I think it's so awesome. So I'm really excited when I saw it on the list, when I was going down the list of new movies hitting Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, yes. I've not seen that movie not in its entirety. Probably since the 80s. I probably saw it in the 80s.
Nice. Yeah, that's going on my list. That looks really interesting. And I feel like, I don't think my brother, I don't think he's seen it either. We like to watch and share old movies that we haven't seen. And we covered actually Turner Classic Movies Film Festival, the TCM, and saw a bunch of things that, I just haven't been able to see yet. And so I feel like that's one that we'll both get a kick out of for sure.
Yeah, I'm surprised nobody's tried to remake it.
Oh gosh, knock on wood. Yeah, I'm sure that's happening.
No,
tomorrow.
I hope they don't. I'm just shocked. I think I had heard of maybe the idea came up about maybe remaking it, but you just can't replicate that cast. I mean, that cast is just exemplary.
Yeah, true.
So. All right. Well, that's our picks for the week. Do you have any teases for the upcoming week that you're watching? That you're excited to watch?
I am 1 or 2 episodes away from finishing that series Dark that I think I said I was going to try and finish last time, but I haven't yet. But I'm very close. And so I will be talking about that soon.
Oh, okay.
It's getting really good.
Interesting. Really good. What season again is that? 3 or
3?
3. Okay. That's been a long time then, because I watched the season 1 for years ago.
I know I'm really late to the game on that, but also the creators of Dark, they have a new Netflix show coming out. They're shooting actually now. It's called 1899, and it should be coming out, I think, next year, hopefully, which is supposed to be kind of similar in the same just what is going on sort of dark thing. But so I'm trying to catch up on Dark before I go into that series.
Okay. All right. Well, next week, maybe I'll talk about Underground Railroad. I was telling Morgan earlier that I had started watching it. I haven't finished watching it. So I'm going to try to get through some more because it is a little hard to watch because it takes place during slavery time. So it's a hard watch, but it's not as hard as them. Them was a lot harder to get through. I actually just skipped through 10 because I was like, I can't handle this anymore. This trauma is just it's worse for the people who had to go through it. But, as a viewer, it's just like, it's just tough. It leaves you feeling depressed because people are like, there's people like this in the world. It's just sad.
Yeah.
Heavy watches. Yeah. Heavy watches. So, but a learning experience.
True. So worthwhile.
All right. Well, I guess that's a wrap for this week.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys for watching.
And you can reach out to us at our Twitter handles that you see here with our names.
Yes.
So reach out if you have your own suggestions. And if you want us to watch anything that's upcoming, we'll try to get a screener in advance and let you know if it's worth the watch.
Cool. All right. Well, this was fun. I will see you next week.
Until next time.
Bye.